Hello, my dear friends. In this story, I want to share the strangest and most surprising turn my life ever took. Get comfortable, pour yourself a cup of tea or coffee, and join me on this journey to the very end. It's going to be gripping, I promise. My name's Nolan, I'm 26, and I live in Austin, Texas, in a small apartment in the South Congress area, where the hum of coffee machines from nearby cafes fills the morning air. I'm a web developer working at a startup that builds websites for local businesses, from bars to yoga studios. My life feels predictable. I spend days coding, evenings with friends over craft beer, and weekends trying to cook something more ambitious than a sandwich. But behind this routine lies a story that made me question everything I thought I knew. My mother, Linda, lives in an Austin suburb, in a house with a big garden where I grew up. She's a career coach, helping people find new jobs or switch professions, and her energy never ceases to amaze me. We're close, despite the divorce from my dad, which happened when I was 16. My father now lives in Houston with his new wife, and we barely talk. Mom, though, has been my anchor, and every Sunday we have dinner together at her place. It's our ritual. She cooks something like a casserole or roasted chicken, I bring a bottle of wine, and we chat about everything, from her clients to my endless attempts to figure out my personal life. During one of those Sundays, as we ate her famous broccoli casserole, she mentioned a name I hadn't heard in 9 years. "I ran into Elliot last week," she said, slicing herself another piece. I froze, feeling heat rush to my face. Elliot Walker was her partner shortly after the divorce. They dated for a few months when I was 17, just preparing for college. Elliot owned a small bookstore downtown with warm eyes and a habit of adjusting his glasses that drove me crazy. I never told anyone, but his presence in our house stirred feelings I couldn't make sense of back then. "He's back in Austin," Mom went on, oblivious to my reaction. "Opened a new bookstore with a cafe in the East Side. We got talking, and I mentioned your work. He said he's looking for someone to build a website." She smiled at me. "I gave him your number. Hope that's okay." My heart pounded. I mumbled that it sounded like a good opportunity, but my mind was flooded with memories. Elliot asking about my college plans while we sipped tea in the kitchen. Elliot laughing at some joke Mom made while I stole glances at him. I was too scared to admit I had a crush on him. Back at my apartment, I tried to calm down. "It's just work," I told myself. "Elliot probably won't even remember me." But when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, my stomach flipped. "Hey Nolan, it's Elliot Walker, an old friend of your mom's. Want to discuss a website for my store? Free this week." I read it, feeling the past rush back, and knew this was only the beginning. A week passed since Elliot's text, and I couldn't stop thinking about him. His message sat in my phone like an unopened letter I was scared to read. I replied a day later, trying to sound professional. "Hey Elliot, great to hear from you. I'm free Thursday, can swing by your store." He suggested meeting at his bookstore in the East Side, and I agreed, though my insides churned with nerves. I hadn't seen Elliot in 9 years, but memories of him, his calm voice, the way he adjusted his glasses, felt as vivid as yesterday. I told myself it was just work, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw his smile, and my heart raced. On Thursday, I arrived at the store 15 minutes early. Elliot's bookstore, called Binding, was cozy, with wooden shelves packed with books and a small cafe in the corner smelling of fresh espresso. I ordered a latte to steady my nerves and sat at a window table, pretending to check emails. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through my phone, and I hated myself for it. This was just a business meeting, but somehow, I felt 17 again, sitting at the kitchen table and stealing glances at Elliot. When the shop's door chimed, I looked up, and time seemed to stop. Elliot walked in, carrying a stack of books, his eyes finding me instantly. He hadn't changed much, the same dark hair lightly graying at the temples, the same thin-framed glasses he adjusted as he spotted me. His shirt's sleeves were rolled up, revealing a tattoo on his forearm, inky lines I remembered too well. He smiled, and warmth spread through my chest, like someone flicked on a light in a dark room. "Nolan, good to see you," he said, coming closer, his voice as low and warm as I recalled. We shook hands, and his touch lingered a second longer than necessary. My skin tingled under his fingers, and I sat down quickly to hide my flush. "This place is amazing," I said, scanning the shelves and avoiding his eyes. Elliot sat across from me, setting a cup of black coffee down. "Thanks, it's a dream I finally made real," he replied, his gaze lingering on me, like he was trying to recall something. I nervously tucked my hair back, feeling his attention wrap around me like a warm blanket. We started discussing the website, He wanted something simple, highlighting the store's vibe and letting people book cafe tables. I took notes, but my thoughts jumbled. Elliot leaned closer, showing a logo sketch on his phone, and I caught a faint whiff of his cologne, something woody, with a hint of citrus. His shoulder nearly brushed mine, and my breathing hitched. "You were always so focused," he said suddenly, leaning back and smiling. "I remember you hunched over textbooks while your mom and I chatted." I blushed, unsure how to respond. He remembered me. It was both terrifying and thrilling. The talk drifted to personal stuff. Elliot asked how I liked living in Austin, and I told him about my job, my friends, and how I loved walking around Lady Bird Lake. He listened intently, head slightly tilted, his gaze so warm I felt exposed. I asked about his life, and he mentioned living in Nashville running a bookstore, but coming back to be near family. "Or maybe I just missed Texas barbecue," he added with a grin, and I laughed, feeling the tension ease. When we finished, Elliot walked me to the door. "Thanks for agreeing to help," he said, standing closer than politeness required. His hand grazed my shoulder, sending a jolt through my skin. "I'll call to go over details," he added, his smile soft, almost intimate. I nodded, mumbling something incoherent, and stepped outside, my heart pounding. It was just a meeting, but deep down, I knew the old feelings I'd tried to bury were stirring back to life. After our first meeting at Binding, I threw myself into the website project for Elliot with an energy I hadn't felt in ages. I told myself it was just professional enthusiasm, but every time I opened my laptop and saw his sketches or texts, my heart sped up. We agreed to meet weekly to review progress, and those meetings quickly became the highlight of my schedule. I caught myself picking out shirts carefully before heading out, as if it wasn't just a work discussion, but something more. It scared me, but I couldn't stop. Our meetings usually happened in the bookstore's cafe, where the smell of fresh coffee mingled with the scent of old books. Elliot always showed up with a mug of tea, his glasses slipping slightly, and he'd adjust them in a way I found impossibly captivating. We sat at a corner table. I'd show him page mock-ups, and he'd ask questions, leaning closer to see the screen. His proximity made my thoughts scatter. Once, his knee brushed mine under the table, and warmth flooded through me. He didn't move away, and neither did I, though I knew I should. Elliot was an engaged and thoughtful client. He wanted the site to capture the store's soul, cozy, warm, full of stories hidden in books. I suggested adding a section for staff book recommendations, and his eyes lit up. "That's brilliant, Nolan," he said, lightly touching my hand as I showed him the prototype. His fingers lingered on my skin, and my breath deepened. I pulled my hand back, pretending to adjust my laptop, but his gaze, soft and slightly teasing, told me he noticed my flush. Over time, our talks started drifting beyond work. One evening, when we stayed late, Elliot suggested grabbing wine at the cafe after closing. We sat in the dim light, lit only by soft lamps, and he opened up about his life in Nashville. He'd run a bookstore but split with a partner he'd lived with for 3 years. "I thought it was forever," he said, staring into his glass, his voice heavy with a longing that echoed in me. I admitted my own relationships rarely lasted past a couple months because I was scared to open up. Elliot looked at me, his gaze so warm I felt exposed. "You deserve someone who sees the real you," he said quietly, and my cheeks burned. Another time, I stopped by the store to show the final homepage mock-up. Elliot was in the back room, sorting books, and invited me there to talk, without interruptions. The space was cramped, shelves closing us in, and I felt his presence more sharply than usual. He stood, so close I could sense the warmth of his body. As I showed the mock-up on my tablet, I accidentally brushed his hand, and he didn't pull away, just smiled, adjusting his glasses. "You're really talented," he said, his voice lower than usual, and my throat went dry. We froze for a second, the air between us thick, like something was about to happen. But I stepped back, mumbling about tweaking fonts, and he nodded, letting it pass. Each meeting left me rattled. I told myself to keep my distance, that Elliot was my mom's ex, and my feelings were a mistake. But his looks, his casual touches, the way he said my name, they made it impossible. I started noticing how often he texted me outside work questions, a photo of a book, a joke about coffee. And I replied, even though I knew I was playing with fire. Work on the website for Binding moved faster than I expected, but each meeting with Elliot only made it harder to keep my feelings in check. We were spending more time together, and I started noticing how his gazes lingered a little longer, how his smile warmed when I spoke. I told myself it was my imagination, but every time he brushed my hand or leaned closer to see the screen, my body reacted like his touch left traces on my skin. I knew I should stop, but I didn't want to. One evening, we stayed late at the store, finalizing the customer review section. The cafe had closed, and the space was quiet, lit only by the soft glow of lamps. Elliot suggested opening a bottle of red wine he kept for special occasions. "We're almost done, it's worth celebrating," he said, pouring wine into 2 glasses. His fingers grazed mine as he handed me a glass, and warmth from his hand spread through my chest. We sat on a couch in the cafe's corner, surrounded by books, and the air between us felt heavy, like before a storm. The talk started with work, but soon turned personal. Elliot asked why I rarely shared about my personal life, and loosened by the wine and his steady gaze, I admitted that my parents' divorce made me cautious in relationships. "I'm scared that if I open up, I'll lose control," I said, staring into my glass. Elliot leaned closer, his knee nearly touching mine, and said, "Control's overrated, Nolan. Sometimes you have to take a risk." His voice was low, almost a whisper, and my heart pounded. I looked at him, and his eyes, dark in the dim light, were so close I could see golden flecks in them. Silence settled between us, and I noticed his gaze flicker to my lips. My breathing grew uneven, and I felt his hand, resting on the couch's back, shift so his fingers were an inch from my shoulder. I wanted to pull away, but couldn't. Instead, I asked, trying to change the subject, "What about you? Why are you single after Nashville?" Elliot smiled, but there was sadness in it. "I spent too long chasing something perfect," he replied, and his hand slowly moved, his fingers lightly brushing my shoulder. It was a subtle motion, but it set my skin on fire. I don't know what pushed me to speak, the wine, his closeness, or exhaustion from hiding. "Elliot, I need to tell you something," I started, my voice shaking. He looked at me curiously, tilting his head. "When you were dating my mom, I had a crush on you." The words spilled out, and I instantly regretted them. My face burned, and I stared at the floor, bracing for awkward silence. But Elliot didn't pull away. Instead, he said softly, "I noticed you were distant back then. I didn't know it was because of that." His voice held no judgment, and when I dared to look up, his gaze was warm, almost tender. "It was stupid," I mumbled, trying to downplay it. "I was just a confused teenager." Elliot shook his head, his hand still on the couch's back, so close I felt the heat of his fingers. "It's not stupid, Nolan. It's honest," he said, his voice so low it sent a shiver through me. He leaned slightly closer, and for a moment, I thought he might close the gap between us. My body tensed, torn between wanting it and fearing it. But he paused, smiling. "Thanks for telling me," he said, leaning back, though his eyes stayed locked on mine. We finished the wine, returning to talk about the site, but the air had shifted. Every glance, every word now felt charged with something new. As I left, he walked me to the door, his hand lightly brushing my back, and that touch stayed with me all the way home. I lay in bed, his words and touches swirling in my mind, knowing I couldn't pretend this was just work anymore. My confession about my teenage crush on Elliot changed everything, even if we both pretended it didn't. We kept working on the website, but his gazes felt deeper now, his smiles warmer, and I couldn't stop thinking about him. His texts came more often than work required, sometimes a photo of an Austin sunset, sometimes a question about a book I'd mentioned. I replied, trying to sound casual, but each message made my heart race. I knew we were heading towards something inevitable, and it both scared and drew me in. A week later, Elliot suggested meeting to approve the final website design. "Come to my office, it's private," he wrote, and I agreed, my stomach tightening with anticipation. His office on the second floor of binding was small, with a large window letting in soft sunset light. Elliot was waiting, leaning against his desk, his shirt unbuttoned at the top, revealing the curve of his neck that caught my eye. "Wine?" he asked, smiling, and I nodded, hoping a glass would steady my nerves. We sat on a small couch against the wall, and I opened my laptop to show the latest edits. Elliot slid closer, his thigh nearly brushing mine, and I felt the warmth of his body through his jeans. He looked at the screen, but I caught his gaze lingering on my hands, then my face. "You've done incredible work," he said, his voice low, almost intimate. His hand settled on mine as I scrolled through the mock-up, his fingers slowly lacing with mine. It felt so natural, but my heart pounded, my skin tingling under his touch. "Nolan, I've been thinking about your confession," he said, not letting go of my hand. His thumb traced my wrist, sending a shiver down my spine. "It made me see you differently." I swallowed, trying to stay composed. "Differently how?" I asked, my voice quieter than intended. Elliot leaned closer, his face so near, I felt the warmth of his breath. "As someone I don't want to let go of," he said, his eyes dark and focused, lingering on my lips. Silence stretched, thick with unspoken possibilities. His hand moved, fingers brushing my shoulder, then tracing the line of my jaw. It was a gentle touch, but it ignited something in me, and I leaned toward him instinctively. "We're done with the website," he whispered, his voice rough, his fingers pausing at my chin. "But I want us to keep seeing each other." My breathing grew uneven, and I felt his knee press against mine, deliberate, no accident. "I want that too," I said, my words hanging like a promise. Elliot smiled, his hand lingering, but not pulling away. "Then dinner," he said, his voice soft but certain. "Just you and me, no work." His fingers found my hand again, squeezing with warm insistence, and my body hummed with his nearness, his scent, coffee mixed with something musky. "I'm in," I said, my eyes drifting to his lips, so close I could have closed the gap with one move. He noticed, his smile deepening, almost teasing. Before fully committing, I said I wanted to talk to my mom. "To avoid awkwardness, given your history," I explained. Elliot nodded, his hand still on mine, squeezing gently. "That's the right move, Nolan." "I'll wait," he said, his voice so warm it melted my heart. As I stood to leave, he walked me to the door, his hand brushing my back, lingering longer than necessary. That touch stayed with me as I walked home, and I knew there was no turning back. After that meeting in Elliot's office, I couldn't shake the memory of his fingers laced with mine, his breath so close it nearly grazed my skin. His words about wanting to be closer echoed in my head like a song I couldn't ignore. I knew his dinner invitation wasn't just a casual meetup, it was a step towards something bigger, and the thought filled me with both excitement and dread. But before I could fully commit, I knew I had to talk to my mom. Not because I needed her approval, but to ensure our past wouldn't loom over whatever this could become. The idea of her finding out about us by chance made me anxious, and I wanted to be upfront. On Sunday, I drove to Mom's for our regular dinner. She was roasting chicken with rosemary, and the scent filled the kitchen, reminding me of simpler times. We sat down, and she started talking about a new client who decided to become a baker at 40. I nodded, listening, but my mind was elsewhere. I twirled my wine glass until she smiled at me. "Nolan, you're not here tonight. What's bothering you?" she asked, setting her fork down. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding, and decided it was time. "Mom, it's about Elliot," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. Her eyes widened slightly, but she nodded, waiting. "We've gotten close while working on the website." And he asked me out. Not for work, but like a date. I stopped, my cheeks burning, staring at the table, afraid of judgment. She was quiet for a moment, then leaned back in her chair. "Elliot always knew how to make an impression," she said with a small smile, her tone thoughtful. "How do you feel about it?" I told her how our meetings had grown into something more, how his gazes made my heart race, how his touches, light but deliberate, left warmth on my skin. "I didn't look for this, but now I can't stop thinking about him," I admitted, my voice catching. She looked at me closely, then her face softened. "Nolan, I just want you to be happy. Elliot and I ended long ago, and it doesn't matter now. If he's the one making you feel alive, I'm happy for you." She stood and hugged me, her arms warm and grounding. "Just don't rush, okay?" "Give it time," she added, and I nodded, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. Talking to Mom eased some of my tension, but a quiet excitement lingered, knowing the next step was mine. The next day, I texted Elliot, talked to Mom. "She's okay. I'm in for dinner." He replied within a minute, "Glad to hear it. Tomorrow at 7, I know the perfect spot. Can't wait." His words sent a wave of warmth through me, and I started imagining what it would be like sitting across from him. No work, no excuses, just us. That night, I lay in bed, replaying his touches, his voice, the moment his fingers lingered on my wrist. I thought of how he leaned toward me in his office, his breath, the heat of his body, and my body responded, as if he were there. I closed my eyes, my breathing growing heavier, and realized I wanted to be closer to him, not just in conversation, but in every way. The thought was daunting, but I couldn't deny it. Dinner would be the start, and I was ready to step into the unknown. Dinner with Elliot was set for the evening, and I spent the day in a haze, picking out a shirt and trying to calm my nerves. His text, "Meet me at 7 at Moon and Lavender, a little spot downtown," sat on my phone, and I reread it, as if it held clues for how to act. This was our first real date, no work as an excuse, and my insides trembled with anticipation. Talking to Mom had eased some of my fears, but now I faced a new reality. Elliot wanted to be with me, and I wanted the same, but every step felt like a leap into the unknown. I arrived at the restaurant 10 minutes early, fidgeting with my shirt cuff. Moon and lavender was cozy, with soft lighting, wooden tables, and the scent of fresh herbs drifting from a kitchen. I grabbed a window table, and when Elliot walked in, my heart skipped. He wore a navy shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, and his smile when he spotted me made my cheeks flush. "You're early," he said, sitting across from me, his voice warm with a teasing edge. "Didn't want to be late," I replied, and he laughed, his eyes glinting in the candlelight. We ordered wine and food. I went for truffle pasta, he chose grilled fish, but the meal was just a backdrop to our conversation. Elliot asked about my dreams, what I wanted from life, and caught in his steady gaze, I shared my hope of one day starting my own web design studio. He listened, head tilted slightly, and his leg brushed mine under the table. It was a soft touch, but he didn't pull away, and warmth spread through me. I didn't move my leg either, letting the moment linger, and his smile widened, like he knew what I felt. The talk deepened when he opened up about his past. He spoke of his years in Nashville, how a breakup made him rethink what he wanted. "I realized happiness is in the people who make you feel at home," he said, looking into my eyes. His hand rested on the table, so close to mine I could feel the heat of his fingers. I leaned closer, and he mirrored me, our hands nearly touching. "You make me feel that way," I said softly, and his gaze darkened, filled with something that set my pulse racing. After dinner, Elliot suggested a walk along the Colorado River. The night was warm, stars reflecting on the water, and we walked side by side, our shoulders occasionally brushing. At one point, he stopped, turning to face me, and his hand slowly found mine. His fingers laced with mine, and my breath hitched. "Nolan, I'm glad we're here," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. He stepped closer, and I felt the warmth of his body, his scent, wine mixed with something woody. My body responded, skin prickling, and I leaned toward him, the distance between us shrinking. We stood there, silent, his thumbs stroking my hand, sending sparks through my veins. His eyes flicked to my lips, and my heart stilled. "Can I?" he asked quietly, and I nodded, not trusting my voice. He leaned in, his hand cupping my cheek, and his lips pressed softly against mine. It was a gentle, almost weightless kiss, but it lit a fire in me, and I kissed back, my fingers tightening on his hand. When we pulled apart, his eyes shone, and he smiled, still holding me. "I've wanted to do that for a while," he whispered, and my body trembled at his words. We kept walking, hand in hand, and every glance, every touch felt charged with promise. I knew this was just the beginning, and the thought of what lay ahead filled me with warmth and excitement. After our first date, the world felt brighter. Elliot's kiss, soft and full of promise, lingered with me, replaying in my mind as I lay in bed or worked at my laptop. We started seeing each other more, and every moment with him felt like a puzzle piece clicking into place. Our relationship grew naturally, though not without challenges. I wrestled with lingering doubts, and Elliot, with his busy schedule at the bookstore, sometimes seemed consumed by work. But when we were together, those hurdles faded. Our moments grew more intimate. One evening, he invited me to his place for dinner. His apartment was small, with bookshelves lining the walls and warm light from a living room lamp. Elliot was making pesto pasta, humming softly, while I sat on the kitchen counter watching him. He turned, catching my stare, and grinned, stepping closer. "You're distracting," he said, his voice low, placing his hands on the counter on either side of me, trapping me in his closeness. My heart raced, and I felt the heat of his body as he leaned in, his lips brushing near mine. "Maybe I want to distract," I replied, and he laughed, kissing me slowly, his fingers tracing my neck, leaving my skin tingling. We spent evenings strolling through Austin, holding hands or lingering in his shop after hours, reading book passages to each other. One night, on the couch in Bindings Cafe, he slid closer, his hand resting on my thigh, and my breath hitched. "Do you know how much I like you?" he asked, his eyes so warm I felt exposed. I leaned in, kissing him, and his hand tightened on my thigh, deepening the kiss until we pulled back, laughing at how easily we lost ourselves. But life wasn't just romance. My friends, learning about Elliot, had mixed reactions. Some teased about our age gap, others were genuinely happy. Elliot faced questions from colleagues too, but we learned to laugh it off, finding strength in each other. We planned weekend getaways, dreamed of a mountain trip, and I started picturing a future with him. Then fate threw a curveball. 3 months after our first date, Elliot got a letter from an old friend in Nashville. His ex-partner from years ago was gravely ill and asked him to come. "I have to go, Nolan," he said, sitting across from me in his apartment. His voice was heavy with pain, and I saw him torn. "It's not about the past, it's about doing what's right," he added, and I nodded, though my chest tightened. I supported him, but when he left, I felt a void. We texted, but his messages grew sparse, and I started fearing distance would change us. A month later, Elliot called. "I'm staying in Nashville," he said, his voice shaking. "Not because I want to, but because I have to. I can't leave him alone." My heart shattered, but I didn't argue. I thanked him for everything we had and hung up, tears burning my eyes. Our love was real, but life had other plans. Looking back, I see Elliot taught me to be braver, to love without fear. I'm grateful for every moment, even if the ending wasn't what I dreamed. What about you, friends? What do you think? Is love worth the risk, knowing it might end? Have you ever written to someone to say goodbye, or let go of the past to move forward? Share your